Pi is the pi ratio required for locating the Akapana. In my initial presentation, we found that England's Stonehenge provided the keys to one level of this magnificent coded system, and pi was not required. Despite its ruined condition today, British archaeologists have long since determined what Stonehenge looked like when brand new, a minimum of 3,700 years ago. It was part of an even more ancient circular earthworks sporting a diameter of 288 feet. The inner circle, known as the Phase 3 construction, with a meager diameter of only 97 feet 4 inches, consisted of 60 huge rocks, 30 horizontal lintels fitted to the tops of 30 upright rocks called sarsens, 60 stones carefully arranged in a 360-degree circle. It proposes a simple formula. 60 times 360 equals 21,600. And it was this number which encodes the latitude of Stonehenge north of the equator, because 51 degrees, 10 minutes, and 42.35 seconds just happens to be the parallel upon which Stonehenge was centered. That discovery advised us rather quickly that the builders not only knew multiplication and numbers, but also that they knew the common circle to have a 360 degrees of arc. Hence, they knew math and simple geometry as well as we do, and in our terms, 3,700 years ago. Even more surprising, the location of Stonehenge proves beyond any question that their mapping skills were at least on a par with our own. They were not the dim-minded semi-savages that contemporary history insists they were. Now, knowing that the ancient Celts understood a 360-degree circle for what it was, in geometric terms, we took the circle over to the Western Hemisphere, where, at Newark, Ohio, we found that the architects of the great aboriginal earthworks were also familiar with the grid latitude of Stonehenge, a third of a world away. Here at the 1,056-foot wide observatory circle, we find 21,600 again, albeit reduced by a factor of 10. 2160, which encoded its latitude of 40 degrees, 2 minutes, 27 seconds north of the equator. Then we walked over to Newark's Great Octagon, a little over a mile to the northwest, only to find that these very same numbers were used again as 216,000, which encodes the longitude, not latitude, of the huge Earth circle which attaches itself to the octagon. 2160 at the observatory circle, 21,600 at Stonehenge, and 216,000 at the octagon. Proof, by way of our own maps, that the ancients knew and used a base 10 system as we do. Then we went on to Mexico to check out the only round pyramid ever found down there, only to discover that even its ancient people likewise knew that a circle had 360 degrees of arc. They proved that by having built this 360-degree monument right on its own grid latitude of 360, at 19 degrees, 18 minutes, 01.05 seconds north of the equator. The same equator that we use, and the ancient British used when they erected Stonehenge. Then we have the stretched circle, the oval-shaped Motley Mound at Poverty Point, Louisiana, which the archaeologists misnamed because they favor digging in the ground rather than looking down from above. Had they paid any attention to our topographical maps, they would have seen that the motley was actually an eye on a mile-long human face, which was formed by the escarpment to the east side of the site. Motley was actually an eye, a 360-degree oval, on a face which looks off to the east. East means 90 degrees, and when 90 is multiplied by 360, it becomes 32,400. The grid latitude of the eye. Then we have Mississippi's Emerald Mound, with its 5 corners, and 6 surfaces, comprising a corrupted 360-degree form. 5 times 6 times 360 becomes 10,800, the figure which encodes its latitude of 31 degrees, 38 minutes, 09.16 seconds north. From there, we take the 360-degree logic to its square-cornered form. Here at Dashur in Egypt, about 9 minutes south of Giza, we find the so-called bent pyramid, a monument whose slope angle changes about halfway up its face, presenting what is readily seen as 2 separate bodies. Egyptologists advise us that the reason for these 2 different slope angles was due to engineering considerations. Too much weight bearing downward would have caused the sides to buckle, and the monument would have self-destructed. Therefore, the ancient builders decided to lower the slope angle at the halfway mark. That's more baloney than we hear in the average political campaign speech. Egyptologists are not going to want to hear this, but Seneferu's engineers knew exactly what they were doing. True, the lower slope angle at 54.7 degrees was a few degrees steeper than Giza's Great Pyramid, but it posed no risk of collapse. Angle and weight were no problem. Over at Tikal in Guatemala, the Mayans had no trouble with collapsing pyramids, and they didn't have squared block construction in their monuments. Here, pyramid interiors were rubble, and the outer veneer merely cemented fieldstone. The 228-foot-tall Temple 4 had a slope angle of 72.6 degrees, not 54 as on Seneferu's, and it's still there. Therefore, if there is any substance to what the Egyptologists assert as the reason for the bent pyramids being bent, then none of the Mayan pyramids should have reached us intact. This design affords an observer the opportunity to see additional numbers beyond those available from a true pyramid design. Here, instead of only 4 sides, we see 8. And rather than seeing 4 base corners and an apex, we see 8 corners and an apex. That's 9. 360 degrees times 8 times 9, 25,920. This figure encodes its actual latitude of 29 degrees, 47 minutes, and 19.01 seconds. It was deliberately bent in order to show anyone why it is where it is. There were no engineering problems. A second reason for breaking an otherwise perfect 360-degree base design was to reveal 2 bodies of 360 degrees. What happens when we divide 360 by 2? 180, of course, which answers its longitude nicely. But not its longitude from our modern Greenwich. The prime meridian of the Pyramid Age was predicated on the position of the Great Pyramid, from which the Bent Pyramid lies to the east. These pyramids are points in a remarkable global matrix which explains a global positioning system involving the mathematical precisions of the Earth. Why haven't we seen this before? Because the questions we have been asking of the pyramids are inadequate. Who built them, when, and how are irrelevant. We should have been asking why they are where they are, and why they were built the way they were built. And they made it so easy for us. We have even known the measurements of the Bent Pyramid for some time. But since we do not understand the language of the age, we can't read the figures. The height of the lower body, for example, 160.996 feet, is the square root of 25,920. Its grid latitude. Another classic example of this simplicity is found in Mexico at the well-known Chichen Itza site, home of the celebrated Kukulkan Pyramid, long famous for its 365 steps. 91 on each of its 4 sides, with the top of the pyramid being the 365th step. Historians see it all as artistic excess on behalf of the builders, but that is erroneous. They built only what was necessary. Study Kukulkan from above. What do we see? Do we not see a 4-sided pyramid with 4 staircases, 9 terraces, and 365 steps? Basically, that's all we need to explain why it is where it is. Simply multiply the numbers shown to find its grid longitude to the west of the Great Pyramid.